Yeah, that's good. So, Alex, yeah, good morning. My name's Steven Hubbard. I'm very much a retailer and been a retailer for over 30 years and been heavily involved in live commerce for over 20 years. My position, obviously, at Spree, I've come on board to support the leadership team as an executive director for the group, with a view, obviously, utilising my experience and knowledge and adding strength to the Spree's business as we go on our journey globally, enhancing and strengthening and boosting retailers' conversions and sales and lifetime value of their audience and customers.
Perfect. We've started the year talking about what 2024 will be like for the world of e-commerce, and in particular, what that means for retail, what that means for digital innovation, digital marketing, and of course, live shopping. In your piece that you read for the Spree's e-commerce predictions report, you mentioned that live shopping is going to surpass 5 billion quid roughly market share in the UK in the next couple of years. What do you think is driving, what is the key driver to the rapid growth of live shopping that makes you so confident of a kind of a massive growth this year and next?
I think, there's a few things to mention there. I mean, obviously 5 billion dwarfs the 640 billion in China alone in 2023, and also obviously the 40 billion in the US in 2023 in live shopping. But I also think that the reality is a lot more retailers are realizing that they need to have and build, their omni-channel business, and incorporate the video content and live content around their customer experience, and journey within their own ecosystem. And I think that's where obviously Spree's strengths lie. It is about obviously leaning upon the social commerce and obviously the relationships and customers the retailers have. And so really how and why is more about the actual retailers themselves, engaging in the technology and enhancing and embracing the technology in a way that actually supports their conversion rates from being that 2.5, 2.7% online to more like 5, 6, 7%, even 10%, as my experience would say in a lot of the case studies and a lot of first-hand experience I've had, where live commerce can actually generate obviously 10, 12, even 14% conversion rates in comparison to regular retail. So I think if you look at that alone and the enhancement of a current core retail business or industry, then the 5 billion is a very small number in comparison to obviously the .com numbers as we are today, which is obviously £1 in every £5 in the UK is spent within an e-commerce environment. So for myself, certainly the 5 billion is a minimum that I feel is achievable, potentially even in the next 12 to 18 months. I think the growth will be there because, as I say, a lot more retailers like Marks and Spencer's, for example, have tested and trialing, the live commerce environment. And I think it will become more mainstream, not just sort of premium brands that are trying the live commerce space and enhancing their customers' experience.
I think as you say, you mentioned Marks and Spencer, and I think that's really interesting because I think a lot of people see live shopping, maybe particularly in the UK, people have seen it as a very accessible way of doing kind of social media and e-commerce particularly for sort of cottage industry or small businesses. But to see these kind of legacy brands, legacy retailers like Marks and Spencer's or John Lewis leveraging live shopping is kind of a super interesting kind of concept as to kind of how it might grow. Are there any difference in the benefits for large established brands being on or engaging in live shopping versus small cottage industry brands?
I think it's about the size of community. I mean, the whole essence of live commerce is around building communities and enhancing, embracing the customer experience. So I feel for people like, Body Shop and even Flying Tiger, that Spree have already been working with in various countries, that's certainly embraced their customer journey and experience. And I think it's about the size of the opportunity. So you can be, a D2C, B2C, retailer or brand or manufacturer in the live commerce space. The reality is it's about building your community over a period of time the immediate, obviously, advantages to people like Marks and Spencer or Body Shop, you know, and even obviously Flying Tiger, a number of obviously retail, you know, bricks and mortar they have around the world now, is that obviously it gives immediate engagement and immediate feedback from that audience and that customer around their journey. And I think for the marketeers of this world and within those environments, you know, those digital environments, it gives a lot of instant feedback, as I say, and numbers that actually proof is in the pudding, as I always say. And I think that gives immediate numbers and gratification, you know, for the retailer and also for the consumer. So I feel that it's really about the size, immediate size. So if, for example, you know, Spree, yeah, and we can obviously add value to even 1-2% greater conversion rates, obviously from a percentage wise increase of the top line and overall profitability of that business, you know, is very significant, you know, for the retailer, especially with someone like, you know, Marks and Spencer, John Lewis, as you say, even Body Shop and the larger sort of global players. You know, for every 1% conversion, you know, compared to the bottom line, it's instant profits. And I feel that that in itself is where we can strengthen, obviously, the retail industry in the UK, you know, over the next 12 to 18 months and beyond. But also, I feel, especially with obviously the numbers in December, as people would have seen, obviously the retail index down at 3.2%. And obviously, the whole idea is to strengthen the customer experience, to enhance the customer experience through live commerce, to enable to convert and for people to come back. As I say, overall, have a much higher lifetime value for that retailer.
I think it's really interesting that you talk about that customer experience and that customer engagement and the kind of community aspect of it. What is it about people have been engaging with their communities, having that customer experience for multiple years, particularly the legacy retailers that you mentioned, Marks and Spencer's, John Lewis, Boots, Body Shop. What's different about live, other than the obvious, it being video and it being live? What's different about live shopping in regards to that immediacy that you talk about versus traditional, you know, comment section of social media, newsletters where they might get asked for feedback? Or, you know, what's the kind of key difference to the traditional e-commerce that's been thriving for many years before live shopping was on the scene?
Yeah, I think, you know, for me, I think certainly, you know, the whole live shopping is there to enhance experience from a .com perspective. We're not here to take away, we're here to add. It's about incremental opportunities for those retailers you touch on. And I think that, you know, certainly from my experience over the last 20 years, you know, live environments are a lot more interactive because the customer is there, he or she is interacting. It's a two-way conversation, certainly through Spree and the technology and asking questions, you know, around certain, you know, sizing, coloration, etc. And so it is the closest to bricks and mortar, I think, than any other medium we have currently and going forward. And that's why it is so powerful, is that people feel that they are in a store environment. It is very much a one-to-one, although, you know, obviously one to masses, but, you know, but at the same time, people can ask questions and engage around, you know, the actual product and their experience. And I feel that, you know, for the retailer, it's the closest they're going to get to the consumer, with them being in their hand through their handheld device, you know, or their computer. So it's the closest environment. And obviously traditional home shopping, where people are, you know, live within people's living rooms or kitchens, you know, etc. I mean, that's why that is so powerful, and it has been, and is still very successful. And I feel that, you know, certainly the live commerce and the technology available now with the likes of Spree gives the retailer and the consumer that opportunity to have that close engagement that they just haven't had really through an e-com platform.
Will live shopping, either this year, in the next 5, will it spell the death sentence then for retail stores? You say that live shopping is the closest that people can get to retail, or to retail stores, to bricks and mortar stores. As they get closer and closer and closer, is it ultimately going to spell the end of bricks and mortar stores?
No, I think quite the opposite, if I'm being honest with you, Alex. Yeah, I think, you know, for me, coming from traditional bricks and mortar into the world of the dot-com boom in the early 2000s, and obviously where we are now, which I feel is very much the start of the live shopping boom in the UK, and has been the live shopping boom over the last 2 or 3 years in Asia, and starting in the US. I feel that, you know, this tool, this enhancement of the customer experience, drives footfall back into the stores, you know, back into the high streets, because you are enabling yourself to talk to consumers about your brand and about perhaps some exclusive product launches, you know, and launched here today, methods and messaging, but actually the whole range and the whole new collections can be launched within the store environment, where you're driving people back in to Oxford Street or Regent Street and other, you know, towns and cities accordingly. And I feel that's why this is so powerful as a medium, because it can be used smartly, whereby you're enhancing the experience, you're giving people first-hand experience of perhaps new innovative products, you know, launching sort of spring, summer, autumn, winter collections. But the reality is you're pushing people back into those stores and the bricks and mortar environment to see the full collections. And I feel it's about giving people tasters and an experience around live commerce, where people can engage, or can ask questions around those exciting, innovative products that perhaps are being launched. So it's very much about, I feel, about new initiatives, about new products, about innovation, because it's all demonstrable and first-hand, rather than anything that is clearance or end of line. That's not the purpose, in my mind and my experience with live commerce. It's a lot more productive, whereby you're enhancing the customer and engaging the customer in a brand or a product area, or, you know, a collection, whereby, like I say, they can actually go and see it in the flesh, in the real world, on the bricks and mortar in the high street. And I think, like I say, that in itself completes the full omni-channel experience for, you know, for the customer and also for the retailer. From a CRM perspective, it becomes very exciting, because if you use smartly, as I say, you can really drive your footfall back, you know, along with actually having a higher engagement, a higher conversion within the live commerce environment.
Yeah, it's a valid point. I think it's also quite interesting is that, as you said, that it's actually going to probably strengthen the high street, and it might actually also mean that where the real benefits lie in live shopping are actually the sort of I want to say local brands, but maybe the local and national brands. So it actually might also strengthen national and regional brands and buying from them, versus saying, you know, particularly with maybe more emphasis on sustainability, as we've seen over the last couple of years, people are actually thinking about more wanting to buy locally and independently and nationally, rather than shipping from Asia or elsewhere. Now you've done kind of both in your business. You've done the kind of the national kind of stronghold brands in the UK, as well as worked in Asia. So maybe you're at a kind of a split view as to whether that's a good thing or bad. But I can see how there could be it could draw people not only back into stores, but also back to national brands versus cheap stuff from China.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a couple of things here. One, as well, obviously, because live commerce, you know, is not about just a single, you know, location. It's a multiple location, because you can go out on the road, you can generate and create content from within the stores as well. So, you know, you can imagine the likes of Hamleys on Regent Street, you know, going live with Spree and launching new toys and collection, how demonstrable and exciting that would be. But obviously then bringing people back into the whole experience within a heritage business, you know. So again, it's about, you know, creating, you know, content on the go and environments that are even more relaxed and more relevant to the consumer of that brand and the loyal consumer of that brand, along with the retailer themselves. And I think, you know, again, you mentioned about sustainable brands. I mean, you know, people like Nobody's Child, you know, who are actually getting involved, you know, in live commerce as well, you know, and believe that also helps, you know, demonstrate and can discuss obviously the points around sustainability, you know, and why that is, and the importance of what that is to the consumer and the products themselves and the brand. And I think, you know, those sort of more regional brands, you know, it's a UK business, you know, it helps grow those brands locally, but then obviously internationally, because the exposure in live commerce is it's to the masses. So the reality is it's about the reach, certainly through the social aspects of, you know, whether, you know, obviously with Meta, especially with Facebook and Insta. and how obviously Spree is supporting that messaging globally for those brands and supporting their businesses. And as you say, it's some really strong messaging that can come through that medium.
Yeah, 100%. There's obviously, and again, you are probably slightly biased in your answer, which I will expect, but given all of the advantages of live shopping, of live commerce, is it for everybody? And if it is, or if it isn't, what kind of top three couple considerations do people need to be making before they kind of make the leap into saying, you know what, I think we should try live shopping?
I think that live shopping does two or three things. As I mentioned earlier, for the more conglomerates, it supports their customer experience and enhances it, to help the conversion. I think for sort of more sort of medium players, SMEs, it gives them another string to the bow to broaden their distribution, in regards to the consumer, and talk to a much larger audience in an open environment. And for startups, it's the perfect vehicle to get an immediate response around their product. So, people coming out of Dragon's Den, for example, I always remember speaking to Tuka Solomon about, his brands. And, in my experience, one of my previous businesses, we launched a lot of the startups that were, investments within the Dragon's Den environment. So even for that, those, startup brands and businesses, it adds an immediate value to them to get that instant gratification from the consumer, and sort of really understand the demand. So I feel, Alex, it does really add value to every level, of the economy in regards to the brands and businesses and service providers that can utilize the tool. And I think it is about adding value to all those businesses in one shape or another. It's just understanding it. And I think that's where the education around live commerce comes. And obviously with Spree, over the last 2 or 3 years, obviously generating that education, highlighting the importance for the economies, globally, not just in the UK, and support the GDP. I mean, that's what it's about, and I feel that this certainly will help both startup SMEs and also conglomerates, as I say, to help grow their business, in a way that is actually natural, and that creating those communities that are giving back, and like I say, hopefully the lifetime value of that consumer goes up at the same time, and people feel confident and comfortable. And I think the other factor is, and I think the thing that sometimes people don't think about, is also the cost saving element, because certainly for people in the fashion and footwear world, live commerce, because of the communication element of that and the social commerce element of that, where people can ask questions, they don't tend to convert unless they really want that product and it's really their size or color, for example, and therefore the returns rate are dramatically lower. In my experience, in the fashion world, where you've got, sadly, 50% returns in some of these larger companies such as ASOS and Boohoo, as it's obviously, it's been in the press a lot in Q4 of last year. In the normal live commerce environment, actually those kind of return rates are more like 10%. And so that difference in returns is a difference between profit or not, and I feel that's again where it adds enormous value for those kind of retailers in those categories.
Yeah. So my second part of my question there is, if it is beneficial to pretty much every business and every industry, which makes a lot of sense, what considerations should be people making? Because I think that sometimes there is the mindset of just do it, just, maybe in our case, partner with Spree and do it. But should people actually just take a minute and breathe and think about it and have a strategy? What might that strategy look like? What considerations are there that they need to be making before they take the leap?
Yeah, I think there is an element of science for sure, in what I call commercial content creation. So I think that one, you've got to understand your audience and how he or she engages, and secondly, understanding your product and what actually work well within a live commerce environment. Because, again, it's understanding what is that content, what is that commercial content, how long should it be, what is the call to action, what are the features and benefits, what really is value to the consumer, and adding value to the audience. And so it's creating that engagement through entertainment, and I call it shoppertainment. So you've got to really think about how you're making that content. For me, I'm very much a believer in reporter-led content rather than influencer-led content. What I mean by that is it's sometimes better to have two people, an expert and a presenter, in my experience, which creates engagement because of conversation. And I feel that that in itself as well, depending on the brand and the product. But all of these things that I talk about are things that you should think about before taking up. I feel everyone can benefit from live commerce and social commerce for sure. I feel it's just more about how you structure the content in the right way for your audience and for your product area.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. We've heard a lot about and we talk a lot about all of the benefits of live shopping and the benefits that's going to bring to the e-commerce landscape in 2024. Is there a downside to this exponential growth? Is there a downside to the industry, the platform growing too much, particularly maybe for people who are wanting to try and get in on it? And is there going to be greater competition? Is that going to be a struggle? Is it going to be a very crowded market? Is that going to be really difficult for people? What are the downsides of massive growth in 2024?
I think so long as fulfillment can be met, I think it's about exceeding expectations. There's a recent study in the US, saying that 87% of people expected their expectations to be exceeded, which, if you think about it, is madness. But it's the reality, and that they're the challenges that every retailer have at the moment, and service provider, is that the expectations of the demographics is much greater. So so I feel it's certainly about growing a business and not over trading. It's about, for me, looking at incremental opportunities and working smart around the volumes whereby you're creating content, you're not wasting your time, you're being smart about your time, and that like I say, structure of content is done in a way that it really does mean that the retailer is more productive and has higher conversions and more engagement and more propensity to return from a customer's perspective, to buy more often. And I feel so long as the retailers and the brands and the service providers are unable to fulfill, as I say, their obligations in a way that's in line with their CRM and their promises around customer experience, then everyone wins. I don't see there being a downside. It's more about being prepared and understanding your consumer, and your customer experience, and how you want to enhance that, and how you want to continue growing your community and adding value to that community. So I think that really is down to the brands, and I feel that's where Spree comes in straight away, and that we can educate and help support those brands through that journey. It's and hold their hands through that learning curve, because certainly for even the larger players, live commerce is very much almost a new industry in many ways. Obviously, I was very much at the front of the early days of .com boom, and for me, the limit of growth was about talent, and really understanding that the .com and building websites, etc., and the engineering side of that. And I feel it's not dissimilar to live commerce, whereby it is very, very young in its infancy, from a growth perspective, especially in the UK and other parts of Europe, certainly compared to obviously Asia and with even the States has gone in the last 2 years. So I think so long as the talent is available and can be supported, and the education is there around live commerce, which is what we're trying to do, and interviews like this and conversations like this is hopefully helping people out there in the UK and other retailers and brands globally to really give them confidence around that. But we're here to support, and that's obviously with my plus 20 years experience. I see me hopefully helping and adding a lot of value to the communities and the various retailers. So yeah, for sure, it's exciting times ahead, and I think, as I say, 2024 I feel is very much a significant year in the journey of live commerce as an industry.
Awesome. You wrapped it up really nicely there as well at the very at the end. You're used to your sound bites, Steven.
I try, but no, listen. I generally, for me, doing this and like, getting the communications now, and obviously speaking to a lot of resellers beginning of 2024, it's there's a lot more interest in the whole live commerce, and for Spree, I think it's a massive opportunity. I think it's just patience is a virtue and persistence is key, because I think it's just one of these things. UK is a lot more slower burn compared to the Nordics, which obviously Scandinavia has been, I think, around live commerce for the last 3-4 years. So there's definitely a sort of a catch up to be had. And I think 2024 is almost like a true year of live commerce in the UK. It's just obviously taking a little while longer than other parts of the West and certainly obviously Asia.
I heard someone say, in a sort of criticism to live shopping, that they could see that it was going so massive. They could see that it was growing. They could see that every brand that they knew and loved, all their competitors, were starting to do it. And that was actually putting them off doing it, because they were like, you know what, there's only so many hours in a day that people are going to be on social media. There's only so many minutes that people are going to be willing to do online shopping. If our competitors are there already, we've missed the boat on this one. We're too late. What would you say? How would you answer? No, I didn't know what to answer it, but then I'm no e-commerce or live shopping expert. But I just thought that was really interesting because it made me think. Actually,
I think
too crowded already?
No, I think also you've got to understand the value of content. The content, if it's created in a smart way, can be repurposed, reutilized for a long time. As long as products can be fulfilled, it doesn't die. So I think that, yes, of course, when you're launching products, and it's like anything, isn't it? If you go to a high street and go down Oxford Street, you've got 100 stores there or more that are launching something new, doing something more wacky, trying to create a different vibe and experience, launching new collections. So people are fighting for that consumer. There's no difference in online environment. I think it's more about the utilizing the content in a smart way, whereby, yes, you're teasing it, you're building up, you're then launching it, and then you're going off and you're following after it. But the content can still be repurposed. So I feel that, although there may be a lot of effort for a retailer or brand at times, the reality is it lasts eternally as long as the product can be fulfilled. So again, it's a smarter way from a marketing perspective, especially, of utilizing that content for the journey and life cycle of that product or brand. So I think,
as you say, it's about seeing it as how did you put it, commercial content creation rather than just a one-off live event.
One-off thing, exactly. It's how you cut up that content in a way and edit accordingly to create different experiences and different wow factors within that sort of commercial content generation, and then how you repurpose it, as I say, in a smart way. So I think that's how I would look at it, for sure.